So a couple of summers ago, one evening, I was sitting on my couch in Oakland, watching TV, scrolling through Twitter, second screening as we do, and a headline popped across my feed. Uber had announced that they were buying the building across the street from where I lived and bringing 2,500 employees there. And when I say across the street, I mean literally across the street. This is the building that Uber bought, former Sears department store, and I live here. So literally, I can see Uber from my window. And I'll admit that my initial reaction was one of dread. I was picturing what it would mean for 2,500 Uber employees to be parachuted into my neighborhood where the median income is about $25,000 a year. What would it mean for my neighbors? What would it mean for my rent? And this is not a completely unanswerable question. We had been watching our neighbors across the bay experience the effects of tech companies moving into a city center, sort of the way you watch your neighbor's house burn down. We were kind of in awe of the flames and feeling very bad for our neighbors, but also very thankful that it wasn't our house and really, really hoping that the winds didn't shift. And the situation in San Francisco right now really does feel as urgent as a fire. When I stood on the stage 4 years ago and talked about what was really the rising inequality in San Francisco that was driven by tech, rents were about $1,000 less than they are now. And if you can see that, the original dot-com peak was about half of where we are today. And Oakland, through a variety of reasons, had sort of been overlooked and had avoided most of this really urgent growth and exacerbated inequality. But there were definitely, and that underinvestment meant that the city and the people in it don't have a lot of economic resiliency. So liquid asset poverty is a measure of how long one can live above the poverty line if they experience an income shock, like losing their job, or if their rent goes up precipitously. And Oakland doesn't have a lot of resiliency to that. And there are signs, very worrying signs, that these up and to the right graphs, which usually in Silicon Valley are something we look for, were coming to Oakland as well. And it never helps when the New York style section has caught on either. You know your rent is about to go up. If you ever want to piss off someone who lives in Oakland, call it the Brooklyn of the Bay. So this is the context in which Uber's announcement landed. And my friends took to Facebook. This is actually from one of my friends' feeds, polling my Oakland people. What % bad do you think Uber moving to Oakland is for Oakland? And a lot of the answers were close to 100%. I'll be honest, my answer was 50%. I'm kind of an optimist. And there's no question that Oakland needs the tax base that Uber is going to bring. But my friends were not alone. A little worried is kind of an understatement. This felt like the shift of the wind that we all feared. And so in that context of thinking about how my neighbors were reacting to this, of understanding the own dread that I felt about who my new neighbors were going to be, I started thinking, how did we get here? How did we get to a place where a company could announce that they're moving thousands of high-paying jobs to an economically depressed inner city, and people would say, no, don't come? And I grew up outside of Detroit in the 80s. If a company had made a similar announcement, I see Garland Gilchrist here from Detroit, who you'll hear from later. We know if a company had made that announcement, we would have thrown a parade. And instead of throwing parades, my neighbors were organizing against Uber moving to town. So for me, as someone who, like many of you, still believe, in this initial optimistic view of the power of the internet to democratize, this felt really tragic to me. I know that the internet has the potential to be the most democratizing platform, communications platform, in human history. And so the industry that's growing up on top of it, the fact that it is driving so much inequality and displacement is a tragedy. And it's not just a tragedy because of the fact that it's creating so much inequality and displacement. It's a tragedy because I know, despite what we like to hear on the stage at PDF about how evil everyone in Silicon Valley is, Most of the people who work in the industry want it to be contributing to broad-based growth and opportunity. They don't want to be part of an industry that is driving inequality and displacement. And on top of that, tech isn't even the cause of this problem. It's not a popular thing to say right now, but the housing crisis in California is decades in the making. This is a chart. This is a really wonky chart. RHNA is Real Housing Needs Assessment. These are the number of housing units that need to be built in order to keep up with population growth. And this is from a period of 2007 to 2014. As you can see, the Bay Area as a whole, these 9 counties that make up the Bay Area, have only produced 57% of the housing that we need to keep up with growth. So if we've established that tech does want to be part of the solution, that most of the people who work in this industry want to see it to be part of an industry that's contributing to growth, and that tech isn't really the underlying cause of the crisis, why does everyone hate us so much? And I think the answer to that question is that it's because tech is not at the table. The tech community does not participate in conversations about what the solutions to this crisis should be. And when they're not at the table, and when people see them getting on their gleaming buses to be whisked away to their exclusive and glittering campuses, it creates a really toxic civic dynamic. And so I said, I think we need to find a way to bring tech to the table. And that's the Tech Equity Collaborative, which we started with what we think is a very optimistic view. We can and should embrace tech-driven growth. The fact that we are shunning, that our communities do not see the industry that is creating all of this economic growth as a partner is a real problem. But at the same time, we need to do so in a way that creates economic resiliency and opportunity for everyone, and we need to protect the civic fabric by developing an ethos of citizenship in the tech sector, by bringing tech to the table. So I'll be honest, it was a little bit of a hard sell. I shouldn't have left his face up here for that long, but it wasn't like an obvious thing, a message to take to tech folks last year. And then this crazy thing happened in November, and something that, as someone who's been organizing the tech community for a long time, longer than just about anyone, an even crazier thing happened. We saw a total uprising of tech workers to demand that their companies, who had played some role in getting us to where we were, fight for inclusive and progressive values. So I'll never forget the day I was walking down Embarcadero a Tuesday afternoon, and a band of Google employees comes around the corner chanting protest chants and waving signs. And that's when I knew something was up. We were seeing the emergence of a new political constituency, and we wanted to be the home for that. We know that a lot of these groups are here. We want to be the channel for that locally. Because honestly, you can't engage on these national issues with any integrity if you're ignoring the inequality in your own backyard. So we're doing this now. And I think you're going to hear a little bit from Derica about the issues, a little bit more of how these issues are working out. But we channel the outsized political and civic power of our constituent base, which are tech workers, into 3 issue areas that we think are the most urgent in making sure that the tech-driven economy in the Bay Area works for everyone. And that's housing, as you saw, workforce development, and access to technology. And we're doing that in 3 ways. We're laying the foundation of knowledge that everyone needs to kind of be active citizens. So we're helping people, many of whom are very new to the Bay Area, learn about the roots of the housing crisis and how we got here, what we can do to get out of it. We're creating volunteer opportunities that are more than just let's go to your local park and clean up one time a year, but we're actually training our members to be nonprofit board members and then matching them with organizations who work in our issue areas. When we're also running advocacy campaigns. So right now we're running a campaign with a coalition in East Oakland to encourage the Oakland City Council to include $5 million in its next budget for anti-displacement and homelessness prevention services. So if there are any Oakland residents watching or in the house, call your city council people. The budget is coming out at the end of the month, and we really need those funds. So if you live in the Bay Area and you work in tech, I hope you'll join us. If you don't, this is not, it's probably most urgent in the Bay Area, but this is an issue that is relevant in cities across the country and around the world, and I'd love to hear how folks think this translates to where they live. And my goal is that next year, when I come to PDF, it is impossible for New York to claim the mantle of moral superiority when it comes to tech. So I hope you'll join us. Thank you.